Good afternoon, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather, and happy Thursday to you. First of all, checking in with my folks on the Gulf Coast. I really hope you guys are doing all right after the destruction that I saw yesterday with flooding in the New Orleans area, strong winds across southeast Louisiana. Just want to make sure you guys are doing all right. So give me a thumbs up or just leave a comment in the section below to let me know you guys are doing okay. So Francine is beginning to spin down, just a remnant depression at this point, thank goodness. But we are certainly not even done. We have reached the midpoint in the season with many more potential threats here. Right now, two that are actually systems. Well, if you include the remnants here of Francine, we've got a depression that's about to become Tropical Storm Gordon, and in the Pacific, a new depression that's about to become Tropical Storm Ileana. In addition, we've got low pressure that is set to form this weekend off the southeast coast that has the potential to become Tropical Storm Helene, or at least subtropical storm Helene. I'll talk about that here later in the video. Another wave coming off of Africa, a couple of invests here that don't have a bright future ahead of them, but something we'll certainly watch for those of you in the islands. And then low pressure may be forming in the Western Caribbean again and trying to sneak up into the Gulf beyond about 10 to 15 days from now. And that, of course, is a while away, so we've got a lot of time to track. Not calling any shots at this point, just keeping an eye on it, as you should as well. So here's the National Hurricane Center, the latest outlook showing a tropical depression, Francine, moving slowly northward through central Mississippi. It slowed down a lot since its landfall yesterday afternoon as a Category 2 storm. We also have Tropical Depression 7, which is expected to move into some warmer water and become Tropical Storm Gordon, perhaps even a hurricane beyond that, but no threat to land. And then two areas that we're watching, 92L and 94L, with very low chances of developing. We do not yet have low pressure, but there is going to be an area to watch off the southeast coast here over the weekend for low pressure to develop. And some uncertainty on this. It could certainly be a U.S. hit. We have seen some storms form close to the coast, and until they form, the models don't quite know how to handle that energy. But we do have still some solutions showing potentially an impact to the Carolinas and maybe into the mid-Atlantic region with perhaps some significant rain as we head into the end of the weekend and next week. At the very least, it could get wet. I don't know yet if we're going to see any kind of tropical development at this point, but something we have to watch. So here is Francine, tropical depression. The center is now centered just north of Ridgeland and Jackson, Mississippi, heading up towards Greenwood, and eventually will become a remnant low somewhere in the Memphis area here tonight into tomorrow. It is going to basically get absorbed by a larger trough that's going to spread eastward here, but we do have some breaks in the clouds south and east of New Orleans, and especially here across Alabama and western Florida, some increased wind shear. With the heating of the day, there will be somewhat of a tornado threat, also a heavy rain threat as well. That is the only real system to stress about here for us in the U.S. for the rest of this week. Here's the area to watch here early next week along a frontal boundary. And here is the track of Depression 7, which will become Gordon. And this, believe it or not, would be our first storm this season that probably does not affect land. Our first fish storm, Ernesto, did affect those of you here in the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. So even though that one didn't hit the U.S., it certainly impacted folks. And we had two tropical storms that hit Mexico early in the season. And then there was Beryl, and then there was Debbie, and now Francine, our strongest landfalling system for the United States. In the Pacific, we do have a depression as well. We have now watches out for portions of Mexico, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Here was a forecast from Labor Day weekend, really the 2nd of September. You guys can see that the door was left open for something to come up to the Gulf Coast. Obviously, it's really tough to make a forecast for 8 to 9 days out, but we had been watching the Western Gulf since the end of August. This system did not develop and come up towards Florida. Instead, it slowed down and had a chance to develop in the red area here and took the northern route. And you could see that I had all of Louisiana and coastal Mississippi in that potential path. Even though initially the forecast had it closer to southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, that shifted once we saw the storm develop. So really not a bad forecast. I'm not bragging about anything. I just want to let you guys know that I really do my best to prepare you all for the future, even when it can be extremely uncertain. And in this time in the Gulf of Mexico with systems that form and give you less than 3 days to prepare, you need as much time as you can get. So obviously, we now have the remains here moving northward, and it will be a remnant low by tomorrow evening. Here's where hurricane force winds were sustained, mainly across Terrebonne Parish, but also up into St. Charles. We had hurricane force wind gusts in the greater New Orleans area. A lot of us believe there should have been a hurricane warning just to be safe. There was a watch, but we had a pretty good beating here, unfortunately, in New Orleans. Fortunately, though, today that is moving out of the area. You can see here the remains of Francine. You can see a lot of dry air wrapping in and a lot of wind shear as well coming in from the southwest. And that is pushing a lot of our intense storms into the Florida Panhandle and across eastern Alabama. We also have an area separated from that where we have just a soaking rain and really no thunder and no tornado threat, but some gusty winds over the northern half of Mississippi, northwest Alabama, west Tennessee, eastern parts of Arkansas. And we could see some of the heavier rain advancing. You can see our cloud canopy taking that all the way up into southern Illinois and maybe southwestern Indiana here. Huge area of high pressure over the northeast. There's going to be cooler air that kind of gets wedged into the mountains, so kind of a cool and wet setup here heading towards the weekend. And this boundary that is lingering here, set up with our upper low, is going to continue to linger over very warm waters of the Gulf Stream, and that's why we may see low pressure forming here towards the end of this weekend. The rest of the country, we see a big trough here over the northwest, big ridge across the southwest. And now our next feature, which is expected to send moisture up into Arizona and northwest Mexico, that'll break the heat up some, but it will also bring an increase in potential rain and certainly humidity. Here is the circulation left over from Francine. Here is a nice swirl. You can see the sun starting to pop out here finally in southeast Louisiana, so you'll get good weather today other than some windy conditions to clean up from the storm yesterday. Sun popping out in this area as well, and behind our big canopy of rain, which is now moving away from the Panama City Beach area towards Tallahassee, we do have to keep an eye on the potential for wind shear to pick up here and more storms to form and produce potentially a few tornadoes with them. Not a huge tornado outbreak, I'll be honest. It's not been as much as I expected, but the storm is still in the area and still in progress. You can see we do have some wind shear to still be managing. Here's a look at potential wind gusts from our NAM model today. And you'll see winds coming down some, but still kind of windy across parts of Mississippi and northern and central Alabama, and breezy as well across parts of Georgia and Arkansas. Now, nothing compared to yesterday, fortunately, and we'll see these winds diminishing as we get into the overnight hours tonight. These are gusts. These are not sustained winds, but the good news is that tomorrow looks to be quite a bit less windy. Still lots of power outages across Louisiana as of lunchtime. Over 340,000 customers out, especially here across the swampier areas of southeastern Louisiana. But even Ascension Parish and the western metro of New Orleans and the North Shore have power outages, as well as a good chunk of portions of Mississippi has had power outages as well due to our storm bringing heavy rain and gusty winds. And far western Alabama is also getting impacted by this storm with power outages across places like Pickens County and just west and northwest of Tuscaloosa. So we'll look at a potential for some heavy rain continuing here over the next couple of days. These rain showers and storms are going to train over the same area. There will be an increased flood threat. It's a moderate risk for flooding, but some places in northern and central Alabama could see as much rain as what we saw in Louisiana yesterday. You could see 7, 8 inches potentially around Birmingham, Gadsden, 6 inches up across northern Alabama, including Huntsville, and maybe locally heavy rain as well across portions of Georgia. Again, this is just one model, but you get the idea that when we have training storms, we could see significant inland flooding. Even though the system is weakening significantly, the moisture is not just going to disappear overnight. And what happens is the upper low west of it takes that moisture and just wrings it out here north and east of the remaining low pressure center. And we could have a few more days of very wet weather across this region, including the Atlanta area as well. Here's a look at Arkansas, potential rain over the next 2 days. And on the northwest side of our low, 3 to maybe 6 inches of rain possible here near and north and west of the Memphis region. And looking farther north and east, the rain is actually a little bit more welcome in some of these parts here, but it could be briefly heavy as well in places like Evansville and Bowling Green and maybe Nashville and Middle Tennessee as well. It's been very dry lately, but we also have maybe a slighter risk for some flash flooding across this region. The tornado risk is expected to gradually shift northward. You guys can see on this discussion from the Storm Prediction Center, maybe a new watch could be issued. And again, it's the daytime heating that we're seeing today is actually going to help fuel these storms that could produce some tornadoes across this corridor especially. Sorry, the red on red contrast here is not helping out. But you can see our tornado parameters are not elevated, but high enough to support a few tornadoes, and maybe even an EF1 or an EF2 here through the afternoon and early evening. And even tomorrow, a slight chance we could see a couple tornadoes again across portions of Alabama, maybe the northern part of the Florida Panhandle, and possibly far western Georgia as well. Again, not the best tornado setup, but one we've got to watch. So here's the map from the National Hurricane Center. Francine getting ready to die here. 7 about to be Gordon. 92, or this is 92L. This is 94L. Or AL94. These are just numbers given so that we can track investigation areas and run models on them. This area is not yet formed, but has a 30% chance of development into maybe a subtropical or tropical storm. And if it happens, it may happen pretty quickly here near the coast. So regardless, you're going to have some coastal flooding, some gusty winds, and some rain over the Carolina coastline here, maybe as soon as Sunday, but certainly early next week. I do want to dive more into the tropics here just to show you guys what's going on, because I know I have folks that are joining from Central America, from the Greater and Lesser Antilles, and from Bermuda as well. So here's Francine. Here's the front that it's linking up with, almost a frontal boundary like that. We will see this track eastward. New low pressure may form in this area. We also have just 2 invests here that are both looking like they're not going to survive. This is the new potential tropical storm Gordon. It's going to head this way and then eventually recurve as it runs into this front tracking east. Another wave we need to keep an eye on, and then keep an eye on this area of thunderstorms here. It's very low in latitude, but some of our models showing that it may try to sneak up in this direction. We have to track every wave and disturbance because these 2 may look like junk right now, but if there's moisture or a bit of an upper level inflection with these and they somehow make it into this area or into this area, there could certainly be a change in what happens in the longer term. And we certainly saw that here with Francine. Here's a closer look at the Central Atlantic, and this is 94L, 92L, and Tropical Depression 7. That's really it. I say that's really it. This is what you would expect on the second week of September. So here's 94L. It's got some spinach to it. It doesn't have a lot of organization to it and a very low chance of surviving. Sorry, that's not 92L. That is actually Tropical Depression 7. Man, the storms are all running together now. But here you go. The future track takes it westward pretty slowly as a moderate to maybe stronger tropical storm. Gordon, the next name, looks like it's going to have a light foot with it as well. Eventually, I think this storm is going to make a turn in this direction and not impact anybody here closer to the U.S. or certainly the islands. So that's some good news. And you can see that on the majority of our models. There's always one, though, that we have to certainly watch. But generally speaking, this is favorable for us. Intensity, it's either going to stay weak and dissipate, or it may have a chance to gain latitude and strengthen into a hurricane. Just like that, you can flip the coin and it'll tell you what'll happen. Either hurricane and fish storm or almost nothing heading westward. So that's what we're tracking here. Okay, this is 94L, and here's 92L behind it. These are the islands over here. You can see Guadeloupe over here getting some heavy rain. This system is it's holding its own. It's going to head in this direction. You're going to have more rain to deal with here in the islands tomorrow into the first part of the weekend, but I don't think this really has a lot of legwork to become a tropical depression or storm. Despite what some of these models show here, it's just not super realistic that this would survive the surrounding environment. And the one behind it is basically a dud at this point. Yes, there's some models still running on it, but I don't think it's going to survive. Here's the Northwest Atlantic. Bermuda is right here, and we're getting some very heavy rain in the Bermuda Triangle today. We've got a nice dry area of high pressure here. That is keeping the front stalled. So if you're up here, you're enjoying the weather for the most part. But if you're in this zone here, we are in for a pretty wet period over the next couple of weeks. And the upper low with Francine is expected to cut off and may get stuck in this region here. As a result, we may see some sort of low pressure forming. Eventually, it could break free from a front and become something tropical, but it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take some time to evolve. If you take a look at the ensemble, you can kind of see multiple solutions from the European ensembles here, all showing something here by next Tuesday, but some are near the coast, some are offshore. This is potential Gordon over here, and right now pretty quiet across the Western Caribbean, and a weak system here coming in behind it, and pretty quiet across the Gulf of Mexico. This is what it's going to look like here in about 5 or 6 days. Moving along here, a lot more uncertainty, a lot more low pressure tracks that are potential to where these may go, but you will see some potentially lowering pressures in the Northwest Caribbean but it's still going to be about 15 or so days away before now and then. So just an area I'm going to be monitoring here in the next 2 weeks, nothing imminent. We're going to be monitoring things coming off of Africa, and you can see just all kinds of uncertainty as we go out further in time here over the north central Atlantic. So let's take a look at this feature as it may potentially form here. This is early in the day Saturday, so about 36 hours from now, weak low pressure potentially on the front. And we do have some spread here that continues to grow, where we've got some guidance that brings it closer to the Carolinas here Monday morning, and some that brings it eastward towards Bermuda. And both of these could still be attached to the front, so nothing may actually form while it's stuck to a front. It will just produce some rain across this region. Now, as we move this along in time, we have a split here, but several ensembles bringing this quickly northwestward here into the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic, sending moisture northward where we do need the rain. If you hear my voice today, you can hear pollen in it. We're still dealing with pollen here in North Carolina, and it is not pleasant, unfortunately. Usually that's not a challenge anymore by the middle of September, but when it hasn't rained much in the last 3 weeks, it has been. But we still see some solutions that pull this eastward towards Bermuda. So yes, question mark, next U.S. storm, but also question mark dud or question mark Bermuda system. Either way, we're going to have to track it here over the coming days. Here's a look at what the GFS model is showing at latest run. You can see low pressure beginning to spin up here over the weekend. Initially, it's pretty far offshore, but it does potentially try to get drawn northwestward by an upper level feature. This is going to be Monday morning, and we continue to see a feature from the GFS moving onshore near Wilmington here, either Monday afternoon, Monday night, or first thing Tuesday. What's left of it is eventually it gets kind of sucked up in the mountains, but that moisture continues. If you take a look here at our potential for rainfall, let me get that total numbers up. You can see some pretty decent totals out here of up to a foot off the North Carolina coast and locally 6 to 10 inches around Wilmington. I'd show you another site if I had time, but I haven't had time to bring that up. So the point I'm trying to make is if low pressure forms or if it doesn't form, either way, that moisture makes its way into the Carolinas, and the second half of the weekend and the first start of next week are looking pretty ugly. Localized flooding, certainly a possibility across this area, and there's a chance it could shift farther south into South Carolina, or it could find its way up into the Chesapeake area and across Virginia. Again, too soon to make that exact call. The Canadian model is also showing low pressure here, although it's keeping it a lot weaker. Runs yesterday were in agreement with the GFS. Today, they don't agree, unfortunately. And the European AI forecast also indicates low pressure will try to form by Monday morning. And you can see it also follows suit with the GFS with landfall somewhere near Calabash, probably as a tropical storm. Never say never on this one. This is Ophelia. That was a strong tropical storm that formed out of the same exact setup a week later here in September last year. It was a 70-mile-per-hour storm that hit Emerald Isle, caused some damage and some flooding along the coast. So while it wasn't a huge storm, it was big enough to cause problems. And this system here has the potential of doing that as well if it forms. Here's a look at the Pacific. Next tropical depression here beginning to take shape. This is the Mexican Riviera here. The Baja Peninsula is up here. And the system is going to come up towards the Baja and eventually recurve and send moisture into the southwest. It's got a decent chance of becoming a tropical storm soon. And as a result, you can see on our models here, we do have tropical storm warnings just posted for the Baja, tropical storm watch a little farther north. We could see a tropical storm watch posted here on the eastern side of the Gulf of California as well. And potentially flooding is going to be our biggest challenge if you're in Mexico, maybe over a foot, as much as 300 millimeters here across the Sinaloa province of Mexico, as well as across Jalisco or Jalisco, I believe it is, and surrounding islands as well. Finally, in the Western Pacific, this is better news, but certainly something to watch here. This is tropical storm Bebinca. Yes, I think I got it right. And it actually weakened a little bit. Some dry air got into the Philippine Sea and caused the system to weaken. As a result, the intensification that's expected is going to be delayed. Better news for Okinawa, but certainly doesn't take you off the hook. This still could be a potentially strong typhoon aimed towards the Shanghai part of China, with landfall sometime on Sunday morning local. It'll be Sunday night across Eastern Asia. So China just got hit with a strong typhoon last week. This one could be a strong typhoon as well, moving through the East China Sea over the weekend. We'll keep our thoughts and prayers with everybody that are going to be impacted by these storms. But as always, I thank you for your time today. We get technical here, so this video a little bit longer than average, but I appreciate you for watching me and appreciate you guys if you do subscribe, or if you're just here for the first time, I encourage you to subscribe. But as always, I thank you. You guys are important to me. I enjoy being able to create content and share with you. I also enjoy being a Christian and having this gift. God has given me a wonderful gift, and there are times where it's easy to get discouraged when things are slow, when people don't necessarily agree with you, but I have to go back to the good book, and when Paul tells the church of Galatia that let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And I just have to remind myself every day that the Lord has put us here for a finite amount of time. He gave his son Jesus up for us so that we could choose to live eternally in heaven with him. But in the meantime, seeds will continue to come up and that harvest will be reaped. And if you are on the Gulf Coast and you are weary from storm after storm after storm, just know that you are still fighting the good fight and the Lord is with you, whether or not you choose to believe him. Good things are coming. You may not see it now, but don't give up. There are better things coming eternally for you. I hope you all have a great Thursday, and I will talk to you again tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day. See ya.